The morning rush hour at Grand Central subway station was in full swing. Hundreds of people moved quickly through the station, each focused on their own destination. The sound of footsteps echoed against the tiled walls as announcements crackled over the speakers. Among the crowd was Tanya Wilson, a 19-year-old nursing student with bright eyes and determination written across her face. Tanya checked her watch and quickened her pace. She was cutting it close for her clinical rotation at Mercy Hospital. Being late wasn't an option, not when her instructor had specifically warned them about punctuality. Her backpack felt heavier than usual as she navigated through the mass of commuters, all seemingly in as much of a hurry as she was. "Excuse me," she murmured, sliding past a group of tourists who had stopped to check their map. The platform for her train was just ahead. If she hurried, she might make the next one. That's when she saw him. An elderly man stood near the wall, slightly away from the rushing crowds. His right hand gripped a white cane while his left hand reached out, occasionally touching the wall beside him. He wore a neat gray suit that looked slightly too large for his thin frame, and his face carried the gentle lines of someone who had seen many decades of life. What struck Tanya most was the look of concentration on his face, a mixture of determination and uncertainty. He was blind, and he was lost. Tanya hesitated. Her train would arrive in 3 minutes according to the electronic board overhead. If she missed it, she'd definitely be late for her rotation. Dr. Henderson had made it clear that tardiness would affect her evaluation. This clinical placement was everything to her, the stepping stone she needed toward her dream career. But something about the man's expression tugged at her. While everyone else rushed by, no one seemed to notice him standing there trying to find his way. 3 minutes, she whispered to herself. "I have 3 minutes." Tanya approached the elderly man, gently touching his sleeve to alert him to her presence before speaking. "Excuse me, sir. Do you need some help finding your way?" The man turned toward her, voice, relief washing over his features. Up close, Tanya could see that his eyes, though unable to focus on her, were a warm brown color. "Oh, thank goodness," he said, his voice deep and measured. "Yes, I could use some assistance. My regular guide couldn't make it today, and I'm afraid the station renovation has changed the layout since I memorized it." "Where are you trying to go?" Tanya asked, noticing the announcement for her train. "It would arrive in 2 minutes. I need to get to the downtown 6 train," he explained. "I have an important meeting this morning." Tanya bit her lip. The downtown 6 platform was on the other side of the station. There was no way she could guide him there and still make her train. She glanced at her watch again, thinking about Dr. Henderson and the clinical rotation. "I'll help you get there," she said, making her decision. "I'm Tanya, by the way." The man's face brightened with a gentle smile. "Thank you, Tanya. I'm Robert." "I appreciate your kindness more than you know." Tanya offered her arm, explaining how he should hold it just above her elbow. "This way you can feel which direction I'm moving," she explained. "And I'll try to describe everything as we go." As they began walking, Tanya heard the announcement that her train had arrived. She took a deep breath, knowing it was pulling into the station at that very moment. In 5 minutes it would be gone, and with it, her chance of being on time. "We're going to head past the main concourse," she explained to Robert, keeping her voice steady and pushing aside thoughts of her clinical rotation. "There's a bit of construction to the right, so we'll stay toward the left wall." "You sound young," Robert observed as they navigated through the crowd. "Are you a student?" "Yes, I'm studying nursing," Tanya replied, carefully guiding him around a group of school children on a field trip. "Second year. Actually, I'm supposed to be at my clinical rotation this morning." "Oh dear." Robert's forehead creased with concern. "Am I making you late?" Tanya hesitated but decided honesty was best. "A little bit, but it's okay. My instructor will understand." This wasn't exactly true. Dr. Henderson was known for her strict policies, but Tanya couldn't bring herself to make Robert feel bad about accepting help. "What kind of nursing are you studying?" Robert asked as they made their way down a long corridor. "I'm hoping to specialize in pediatrics," Tanya explained, warming to the topic. "I've always loved working with kids. There's something about helping them when they're at their most vulnerable that just feels right, you know?" "That's a noble calling," Robert nodded. "The world needs more compassionate healthcare workers, especially ones who see helping others as more than just a job." They paused at an intersection of corridors. Tanya oriented herself, confirming they needed to turn left. As they walked, she described their surroundings, the blue mosaic tiles on the wall, The newsstand to their right, the musicians playing jazz in the corner. You paint quite a picture, Robert commented. I can almost see it all. We're approaching some stairs now, Tanya warned. There's about 15 steps down. Would you prefer the elevator? It's a bit of a detour. The stairs are fine if you don't mind guiding me, Robert replied. I've been blind for only 5 years. Still getting used to it sometimes, but Stairs and I have an understanding. There was humor in his voice that made Tanya smile. As they carefully descended the stairs, she found herself wondering about his life. What he did before retirement, what caused his blindness, who was supposed to be helping him today. Careful of the last step, she cautioned. Now we're heading straight for about 50 feet, then we'll turn right. Robert nodded, moving confidently beside her. You're very good at this. Not everyone knows how to guide a blind person properly. My grandmother lost her sight to diabetes when I was in high school, Tanya explained. I used to help her get around. She taught me the right way to do it. She taught you well, Robert said warmly. They continued through the station, navigating around hurried commuters. Tanya checked the time again. She was definitely going to be late now. Her stomach tightened at the thought of facing Dr. Henderson, but watching Robert's relieved expression as they made progress strengthened her resolve. This was the right choice. The platform is just ahead, she told him as they approached their destination. It's pretty crowded this morning. What time is it? Robert asked. 8:27, Tanya replied. And when does your clinical rotation begin? 8:30, she admitted. But the hospital is a 15-minute train ride away. Robert's expression turned apologetic. Oh my, you're going to be quite late because of me. It's okay, Tanya assured him, though uncertainty crept into her voice. Some things are more important. They reached the platform for the downtown 6 train. The electronic board showed that the next train would arrive in 2 minutes. Here we are, Tanya announced. The train will be here in 2 minutes. Is there a particular car you prefer? The middle is best, Robert replied. Puts me closer to the exit I need at my stop. Tanya guided him to a good spot on the platform. Would you like me to wait until the train arrives? If you can spare another 2 minutes in your day of good deeds, Robert smiled. I'd appreciate it. They stood together as the platform continued to fill with morning commuters. Tanya wondered if her decision would cost her more than just being late. This rotation was crucial for her final evaluation. May I ask what your meeting is about today? She asked, genuinely curious about this gentle man who had upended her morning. Robert's face lit up. It's actually quite important. I serve on the board of a hospital. We're discussing a new scholarship program for promising healthcare students, particularly those who demonstrate exceptional compassion. That sounds wonderful, Tanya replied. Those scholarships make all the difference for students like me. The announcement for the approaching train blared over the speakers. As the train pulled into the station, Tanya felt a strange reluctance to part ways with Robert. Here's your train, she said. Would you like me to help you board? Yes, thank you. Robert nodded. When the doors opened, Tanya guided him into the car and helped him find a seat. Is there anything else you need before I go? Robert settled into his seat and turned his face toward her. Though his eyes couldn't see her, Tanya felt as if he was looking directly into her soul. You've done more than enough, young lady, he said. You know, character is revealed in the choices we make when we think no one is watching. But someone is always watching, even if they can't see. There was something in his tone that gave Tanya pause, but before she could respond, the warning chime sounded. She quickly stepped off the train just as the doors closed. Standing on the platform, she watched as Robert's train pulled away. Only then did the full weight of her situation hit her. She was going to be at least 30 minutes late for clinical rotation. Dr. Henderson would be furious. With a deep breath, Tanya turned and hurried back through the station. As she ran up the stairs toward her own platform, she tried to formulate an explanation that wouldn't sound like an excuse. What she didn't know was that her brief encounter with the blind man in the gray suit was about to change her life in ways she couldn't possibly imagine. Tanya rushed into Mercy Hospital, her heart pounding in her chest. The lobby clock showed 9:05 a.m., 35 minutes late for her clinical rotation. She hurried to the elevator, mentally rehearsing what she would say to Dr. Henderson. The truth seemed best, but would it matter? Rules were rules, and punctuality was non-negotiable. The elevator doors opened on the pediatric floor. Tanya straightened her scrubs and took a deep breath before walking to the nurses' station where her group would be gathered. As expected, they were already gone, making their morning rounds with Dr. Henderson. Nurse Chen looked up from her computer and raised an eyebrow. "Running late today, Wilson?" "Yes, ma'am," Tanya admitted. There was a situation at the subway station. A blind man needed help finding his platform. Nurse Chen's expression softened slightly. "Dr. Henderson's group is in room 412, better hurry." Tanya rushed down the corridor, her nursing shoes squeaking against the freshly waxed floor. Outside room 412, she paused to collect herself, then quietly opened the door. Dr. Henderson, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair pulled into a tight bun, was in the middle of explaining a treatment plan to the other students. She stopped mid-sentence as Tanya entered. "Miss Wilson," she said, her voice cool and clipped. "How kind of you to join us." 5 pairs of eyes turned to Tanya. Her classmates' expressions ranged from sympathy to barely concealed satisfaction at her predicament. "I'm sorry for being late." "Dr. Henderson," Tanya said, keeping her voice steady. "We'll discuss this after rounds," Dr. Henderson replied, turning back to continue her explanation. For the next 2 hours, Tanya focused intensely on the patients and Dr. Henderson's instructions, trying to make up for her tardiness with exceptional attentiveness. They moved from room to room, checking on young patients with various conditions, from asthma exacerbations to post-surgical recoveries. In the last room, they met a 6-year-old boy named Miguel who was recovering from appendicitis. While Dr. Henderson discussed his case, Tanya noticed the boy's frightened expression as he stared at the IV in his arm. When the other students filed out, Tanya hung back for a moment. "That tube looks pretty scary, huh?" she said gently to Miguel. The boy nodded, his dark eyes wide. "Want to know a secret?" Tanya leaned closer. "That tube is like a superhero highway. It's carrying medicine that's fighting the bad guys in your tummy." Miguel's expression shifted from fear to curiosity. "Like Spider-Man?" "Exactly like Spider-Man," Tanya grinned. "Super fast and super strong." A small smile appeared on the boy's face as Tanya gave him a gentle high five and promised to check on him later. As she left the room, Tanya found Dr. Henderson waiting in the hallway, arms crossed. "My office, now," was all she said. Dr. Henderson's office was small but meticulously organized. Degrees and certifications lined the walls, and a single photo of Dr. Henderson with an elderly couple, her parents perhaps, sat on the desk. "Sit down." "Ms. Wilson," Dr. Henderson instructed, taking her own seat. "Would you care to explain why you were 35 minutes late this morning?" Tanya sat straight in her chair. There was an elderly blind man lost at Grand Central Station. His regular guide hadn't shown up, and he needed help finding his train. "I couldn't just leave him there." Dr. Henderson's expression remained neutral. "And did you consider calling the station staff to assist him?" Tanya blinked. The thought hadn't even occurred to her in the moment. "No, ma'am, I didn't." "I see." Dr. Henderson tapped her pen against her desk calendar. "Ms. Wilson, your clinical evaluations show that you have excellent technical skills and a good grasp of the material. Your patient interactions, particularly with children, are exceptional." Tanya felt a glimmer of hope, which quickly faded with Dr. Henderson's next words. "However, punctuality and reliability are not optional qualities in a nurse. Patients and healthcare teams depend on you to be where you're supposed to be, when you're supposed to be there." She fixed Tanya with a stern gaze. "This isn't the first time you've been late, though it is certainly the most egregious instance." "I understand," Tanya said quietly. "Do you?" Dr. Henderson leaned forward. "Because I'm not sure you grasp the seriousness of this situation. This rotation accounts for 40% of your final grade. Hospital policy states that unexcused tardiness beyond 30 minutes results in an automatic failure for the day." Tanya felt the blood drain from her face. "Dr. Henderson, please. I can stay late, do extra work. Rules exist for a reason, Ms. Wilson," Dr. Henderson interrupted. "Actions have consequences." A heavy silence filled the room. Tanya thought about her grandmother, who had worked double shifts as a housekeeper to help pay for Tanya's nursing school. She thought about the loans she'd taken out, the nights spent studying instead of sleeping, all potentially jeopardized because she'd stopped to help someone. Yet even facing these consequences, she couldn't bring herself to regret her decision. I understand the rules, Dr. Henderson, Tanya said finally, and I accept the consequences. But I still believe I made the right choice this morning. That man needed help, and I was there to give it. Something flickered across Dr. Henderson's face. Surprise, perhaps, or something else Tanya couldn't quite identify. Dr. Henderson made a note in Tanya's file. You may go now. Report to the pediatric ward for the remainder of your shift. Tanya left the office feeling numb. Had she just thrown away her chance at passing this rotation? What would that mean for her scholarship, for her future? The rest of the day passed in a blur. Tanya focused on her assigned patients, checking vital signs, administering medications, and updating charts. She spent extra time with Miguel, teaching him how to make shadow puppets on the wall with the light from his bedside lamp. At 4:30 p.m., as Tanya was preparing to leave, Nurse Chen approached her. Wilson, you have a visitor at the front desk. Confused, Tanya made her way to the lobby. Who would be visiting her at the hospital? Her grandmother was at her weekly church group, and Tanya's few close friends knew better than to interrupt her during clinicals. As she approached the reception area, she saw a familiar figure, an elderly man in a gray suit, white cane in hand, speaking with the receptionist. Tanya stopped in her tracks. It was Robert, the blind man from the subway. Excuse me, she said, approaching cautiously. Robert, it's Tanya from the subway this morning. Robert turned toward her, voice, a warm smile spreading across his face. Tanya, I was hoping to find you here. How did you know where to find me? She asked, bewildered. You mentioned you were heading to your clinical rotation at a hospital, Robert explained. There aren't many teaching hospitals within 15 minutes of Grand Central by subway. I made an educated guess that it might be Mercy. Tanya wasn't entirely convinced by this explanation, but she was too surprised by his appearance to question it further. I wanted to thank you properly for your help this morning, Robert continued, and to apologize for making you late. I hope it didn't cause too much trouble. Tanya hesitated. Well, actually, before she could explain, the elevator doors opened and Dr. Henderson stepped out. She spotted Tanya and walked over, then stopped abruptly when she saw Robert. Dr. Caldwell, she said, her usually stern voice tinged with respect and surprise. I didn't know you were visiting today. Tanya looked between them in confusion. Dr. Henderson knew Robert? Dr. Henderson, Robert nodded warmly. Always a pleasure. I was just speaking with this remarkable young woman who helped me navigate Grand Central this morning when my regular assistant couldn't make it. Dr. Henderson's eyes widened almost imperceptibly as she turned to look at Tanya. Ms. Wilson helped you this morning? Indeed she did, Robert confirmed. Went quite out of her way, in fact. I believe she mentioned she had a clinical rotation to get to, but she insisted on making sure I reached my train safely. A strange expression crossed Dr. Henderson's face as the pieces fell into place. She looked at Tanya with new eyes. I see, Dr. Henderson said slowly. Ms. Wilson, I believe we need to revisit our earlier conversation. Dr. Caldwell, would you care to join us in the conference room? Robert smiled. I'd be delighted. As they walked toward the conference room, Tanya's mind raced with questions. Who was this man, really? How did Dr. Henderson know him? And why did she suddenly seem so much more receptive? In the conference room, Dr. Henderson pulled out a chair for Robert before sitting down herself. She gestured for Tanya to take a seat as well. Ms. Wilson, Dr. Henderson began, her tone markedly different from their earlier meeting. It seems I need to provide some context. Dr. Robert Caldwell is not just any patient or visitor. He's the former chief of surgery at Mercy Hospital and currently serves on the hospital's board of directors. Tanya stared at Robert in shock. The lost blind man from the subway was one of the most important figures at the hospital. Dr. Caldwell was on his way to a board meeting this morning. Dr. Henderson continued. The very meeting where the new nursing scholarship program was being finalized. Robert smiled in Tanya's direction. A scholarship program designed to recognize and reward nursing students who demonstrate exceptional compassion and character alongside their clinical skills. Tanya sat very still, trying to process what she was hearing. The morning's encounter suddenly took on an entirely new meaning. Tomorrow, Robert said, leaning forward slightly, I'd very much like to continue our conversation. There's something important I'd like to discuss with you. As Tanya looked between Robert's kind face and Dr. Henderson's now almost deferential expression, She realized that her simple decision to help a stranger that morning had set something significant in motion, something that might change the course of her future in ways she couldn't yet imagine. That night, Tanya barely slept. She tossed and turned in her small studio apartment, replaying the day's events in her mind. The elderly blind man she'd helped at the subway station turned out to be Dr. Robert Caldwell, former chief of surgery and current board member at Mercy Hospital, the same hospital where she was doing her clinical rotation, the same hospital where she'd nearly failed her day's assessment for being late because she'd stopped to help him. The coincidence seemed too perfect, almost unbelievable. Had he somehow planned this? No, that was impossible. How could he have known she would be the one to offer help? And yet the timing of everything felt strange. By morning, Tanya had more questions than answers. She got ready for her shift with extra care, making sure to leave 20 minutes earlier than usual. No chances today. The subway ride was uneventful. Tanya found herself scanning the station, half expecting to see Dr. Caldwell again, but of course he wasn't there. As she approached the hospital, her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Ms. Wilson, please come to conference room B at 10 a.m. Dr. Henderson." Tanya's stomach tightened. Was this about yesterday? About Dr. Caldwell? Or had Dr. Henderson decided to fail her for the rotation after all? The pediatric ward was bustling with activity when Tanya arrived. She checked in with Nurse Chen and began her morning duties, her mind only half focused on her tasks. At 9:55, she excused herself and made her way to conference room B on the administrative floor. She'd never been to this part of the hospital before. The hallways were quieter here, with plush carpeting instead of the easy-to-clean linoleum of the patient floors. The walls displayed large framed photographs of the hospital through the decades, along with portraits of distinguished doctors and administrators. Tanya paused in front of one such portrait, a younger Dr. Caldwell in his surgical scrubs, looking directly at the camera with confident, seeing eyes. The plaque beneath read, "Dr. Robert Caldwell, Chief of Surgery 1985-2015, pioneer of the Caldwell technique for pediatric neurosurgery." Quite handsome in his day, wasn't he? Tanya jumped at the voice behind her. Dr. Caldwell stood there, white cane in hand, a gentle smile on his face. "I didn't mean to startle you," he said. "My hearing has become quite sharp since losing my sight. Your footsteps stopped, and I guessed you might be looking at one of these old photos." "It's a nice picture," Tanya said, feeling awkward. "You looked very confident." Dr. Caldwell laughed. "That's a polite way of saying arrogant, which I probably was. Success at a young age often has that effect." He gestured toward the conference room. "Shall we? I believe Dr. Henderson is waiting for us." The conference room was more impressive than Tanya had expected. A large oval table dominated the space, surrounded by comfortable leather chairs. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city skyline. Dr. Henderson was already seated, along with two other people Tanya didn't recognize. A middle-aged woman in a tailored business suit and an older man with kind eyes and salt-and-pepper hair. "Ah, here they are," Dr. Henderson said, rising from her seat. Her tone was warmer than Tanya had ever heard it. "Ms. Wilson, thank you for joining us. You've already met Dr. Caldwell. Allow me to introduce Ms. Patricia Rivera, the hospital's chief of operations, and Dr. Thomas Franklin, head of the nursing education department." Tanya shook hands with everyone, trying to hide her growing nervousness. Why were all these important people gathered to meet with her? "Please have a seat," Ms. Rivera said, gesturing to an empty chair. Dr. Caldwell settled into the chair beside Tanya, placing his cane carefully against the table edge. "Ms. Wilson," he began, "I imagine you're wondering why we've asked you here today." Tanya nodded, then quickly added, "Yes, sir," remembering that he couldn't see her gesture. "Yesterday's encounter was not a test or a setup, if that's what you're thinking," Dr. Caldwell continued with a smile. "My regular assistant, Mr. Patterson, had a family emergency and couldn't make it. I was genuinely lost and genuinely grateful for your help. What Dr. Caldwell hasn't told you," Dr. Franklin interjected, "is that 3 other people passed by him before you came along. One even told him to call for assistance and kept walking." Tanya frowned. "But that would take so much longer. And he said he had an important meeting." "Precisely," Dr. Caldwell nodded. "The meeting was about the compassionate care scholarship we're establishing. The irony of discussing a scholarship meant to reward compassion when I had just experienced such a lack of it, struck me deeply. He turned his face toward Tanya. And then there was you. Dr. Henderson leaned forward. Ms. Wilson, when you came to my office yesterday, I was prepared to enforce the rules strictly. Tardiness is unacceptable in healthcare settings. But what I've come to realize is that the reason behind your tardiness exemplifies exactly the kind of character we want to foster in our nurses. The Compassionate Care Scholarship, Ms. Rivera explained, will cover full tuition for nursing students who demonstrate exceptional empathy and compassion alongside clinical excellence. We've been developing the criteria for months. Yesterday, Dr. Caldwell shared your story with the board. My story? Tanya echoed, feeling slightly dazed. The story of a nursing student who risked being late to her own clinical rotation, knowing the serious consequences, to help a blind stranger find his way, Dr. Caldwell said. That's the kind of instinctive compassion that can't be taught in a classroom. There was a moment of silence as Tanya absorbed his words. We'd like to offer you the opportunity to be the first recipient of the Compassionate Care Scholarship, Dr. Franklin said. It would cover your remaining tuition and include a guaranteed position at Mercy after graduation if you're interested. Tanya's breath caught in her throat. She looked at their expectant faces, waiting for the catch, for the but that would follow this too-good-to-be-true offer. I don't know what to say, she stammered. Say yes, Dr. Henderson suggested, with what might have been the first genuine smile Tanya had ever seen from her. Before you decide, Dr. Caldwell said, raising a hand, there's one more thing you should know. This scholarship comes with a mentorship component. I'd like to meet with you regularly to discuss your experiences, your challenges, and your growth as a healthcare provider. Even in retirement, I believe I have something to offer in the way of guidance. Tanya looked at the blind doctor who had, in the space of 24 hours, completely changed the trajectory of her life. There was something about his calm presence that inspired trust. Yes, she said finally, her voice stronger now. Yes to all of it. Thank you so much for this opportunity. As handshakes and congratulations went around the table, Tanya felt a surreal sense of wonder. Yesterday morning, she had been just another struggling nursing student, counting every dollar and worrying about making ends meet. Now, her education was secured, her future employment guaranteed, and she had gained a mentor in one of the most respected surgeons the hospital had ever known. After the meeting concluded, Dr. Caldwell asked Tanya to walk with him to the hospital cafe. I have a confession to make, he said as they settled at a quiet corner table with their coffees. When I realized who you were yesterday, that you were the same young woman who had helped me, I did some checking into your student record. Tanya tensed slightly. Your academic performance is impressive, he continued, especially considering you're working part-time while going to school full-time. But what caught my attention were the notes from your clinical supervisors. He pulled a small device from his pocket and pressed a button. A computerized voice began reading. Wilson shows natural rapport with patients, particularly children. Goes above and beyond to ensure patient comfort. Excellent at explaining procedures in accessible language. Shows initiative in learning new skills. Dr. Caldwell put the device away. Not everyone with technical skill has the heart for this work. You clearly do. Tanya looked down at her coffee cup, feeling both proud and humbled. My grandmother raised me to believe that how you treat people matters more than almost anything else. She used to say technical skills can be taught, but kindness comes from the soul. Dr. Caldwell nodded thoughtfully. Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman. Is she the reason you went into nursing? Partly, Tanya admitted. She got really sick when I was 16. The nurses who took care of her, they made all the difference. Not just medically, but emotionally. They treated her with dignity. I wanted to be able to do that for others. And now you will, Dr. Caldwell smiled, on a larger scale than you might have imagined. As they continued talking, Tanya realized this conversation felt different from any she'd had with an instructor before. Dr. Caldwell spoke to her not as a student, but as a future colleague. He asked about her ideas, her observations about patient care, her thoughts on how the hospital might improve its approach to pediatrics. You have good instincts, he said when she described how she'd helped Miguel overcome his fear of his IV, children, respond to story and metaphor better than technical explanations. It's something many doctors forget. When they finally parted ways, Dr. Caldwell handed Tanya his card with his contact information in Braille and standard print. Our official mentorship meetings will start next week, he said. But feel free to call if you have questions before then. Tanya thanked him again and watched as he confidently made his way through the hospital lobby with his cane. No longer the lost man from the subway. As she headed back to the pediatric ward, she felt a new sense of purpose in her steps. A simple choice to help someone had opened doors she hadn't even known existed. What other possibilities might be waiting just around the corner? She couldn't wait to find out. 3 months had passed since that fateful morning at Grand Central Station. Tanya's life had transformed in ways she could never have imagined. The Compassionate Care Scholarship had relieved her financial burden, allowing her to cut back on her weekend waitressing hours and focus more on her studies. Her grades, already good, had improved even further, but the most significant change was her weekly mentoring sessions with Dr. Caldwell. Every Wednesday afternoon, they would meet in his office, a warm space filled with medical textbooks in Braille, framed photographs from his surgical career, and the soft classical music he enjoyed. Sometimes they discussed specific cases from Tanya's clinical rotation. Other times they explored broader topics in healthcare or simply shared stories from their lives. Today, as Tanya approached his office door, she heard voices inside. She paused, not wanting to interrupt if Dr. Caldwell was in a meeting. "She has remarkable potential, Eleanor," she heard Dr. Caldwell saying. "In 30 years of teaching, I've rarely seen such natural instincts for patient care." "I've noticed," replied a voice Tanya recognized as Dr. Henderson's. "Her evaluations have been exceptional this quarter. The pediatric patients ask for her by name." Tanya felt a flush of pride at their words. Dr. Henderson, once so critical, was now speaking of her with approval. She knocked gently on the partially open door. "Come in." "Tanya," Dr. Caldwell called out. "My hearing may be the one sense that improved when I lost my sight." "I recognized your footsteps in the hallway." Tanya entered the office to find Dr. Caldwell seated in his usual leather armchair, with Dr. Henderson standing by the window. "Dr. Henderson was just leaving," Dr. Caldwell explained. "We were discussing the expansion of the Compassionate Care program." Dr. Henderson nodded. "Ms. Wilson, good to see you. Keep up the excellent work on the pediatric ward." After Dr. Henderson left, Tanya settled into the chair opposite Dr. Caldwell. "Expansion of the program?" she asked curiously. Dr. Caldwell smiled. "Word of your scholarship has spread. 2 other board members have decided to contribute funding. We'll be able to offer scholarships to 3 students next year instead of just 1. "That's wonderful," Tanya said, genuinely pleased that others would receive the same opportunity she had. "Indeed." Dr. Caldwell leaned back in his chair. "But today I wanted to discuss something specific with you. I've been thinking about your comments last week regarding the children's fear of medical procedures." During their previous session, Tanya had shared her observations about how many young patients were terrified of routine procedures simply because they didn't understand what was happening. "I remember," Tanya nodded, "like Miguel with his IV, or that little girl Lily who was scared of the blood pressure cuff because she thought it would keep squeezing until her arm popped." "Precisely," Dr. Caldwell said. "Your approach of using age-appropriate explanations and even simple stories to help them understand has been remarkably effective according to the nurses' reports." He reached for a file on his desk, his fingers finding it with practiced ease. "I've spoken with the head of pediatrics. We'd like you to develop this idea further. Perhaps create some kind of standardized method that other nursing students and staff could learn." Tanya sat up straighter. "You mean like a formal program?" "Exactly." Dr. Caldwell's face lit up with enthusiasm. "Nothing too rigid. We don't want to stifle the natural rapport you've developed. But some basic guidelines, perhaps some materials that could help children understand common procedures." Wow. Tanya struggled to find words. "That would be amazing. I've actually been thinking about something like this. Maybe simple picture books for the younger kids and more detailed explanations with diagrams for the older ones." "Perfect," Dr. Caldwell nodded. "The hospital has allocated a small budget for materials. Dr. Wong in pediatrics is particularly interested in implementing this in her department first, as a pilot program." Tanya's mind raced with possibilities. This was an opportunity to make a real difference beyond just her individual patient interactions. She could help change how the entire hospital approached explaining medical care to children. There's something else, Dr. Caldwell continued. The annual healthcare education conference is coming up in October. I think your project would make an excellent presentation topic. Would you be interested in speaking? Tanya's excitement faltered. A presentation? In front of other healthcare professionals? I'm still just a student. A student with insight worth sharing, Dr. Caldwell countered gently. I would help you prepare, of course. Think about it. This could help not just our hospital, but potentially others as well. Tanya thought about the frightened faces of children she'd cared for, how their fear often made treatments more difficult and recovery more stressful. If she could help change that even a little, I'll do it, she decided. Both the program and the presentation. Dr. Caldwell smiled broadly. Excellent. I had a feeling you would say yes. That's why I took the liberty of setting up a meeting with Dr. Wong for tomorrow morning. He handed her a folder. Here's some preliminary information about the budget and resources available. As Tanya took the folder, her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced down to see a message from her grandmother. Roof leaking again. Super says can't come till next week. Tanya sighed. Her grandmother lived in an old apartment building with a landlord who was perpetually slow with repairs. Despite the scholarship covering Tanya's education, other financial challenges remained. Dr. Caldwell tilted his head, hearing her sigh. Is everything all right? It's my grandmother, Tanya explained. There's a leak in her apartment roof and the building super won't fix it until next week. Ah, the joys of New York real estate, Dr. Caldwell said dryly. Where does your grandmother live? In the Bronx, same apartment building where she raised me after my parents died. Dr. Caldwell was quiet for a moment. You know, Tanya, one of the benefits of having practiced medicine for 40 years is the network one builds. I happen to know a contractor who owes me a favor. He fixed up my house after I lost my sight, making it more navigable. Would you like me to give him a call? Tanya started to protest that it wasn't necessary, that they'd managed with leaky roofs before, but something in Dr. Caldwell's expression stopped her. His offer wasn't charity. It was one person helping another, just as she had helped him that day at the subway station. That would be really kind, she said simply. Thank you. It's nothing. Dr. Caldwell waved his hand dismissively. Now tell me more about your ideas for this program. I'm particularly interested in how you might approach explaining something complex like surgery to a 5-year-old. For the next hour, they brainstormed ideas for the program, which Tanya had decided to call Medical Mysteries Explained. Her concept involved creating characters, a friendly Dr. Octopus with helpful tentacles for the younger kids, and more realistic but still approachable explanations for older children. By the time their session ended, Tanya had filled several pages with notes and sketches. As she gathered her things to leave, Dr. Caldwell asked, Will you be taking the subway home today? Yes, Tanya replied. Why do you ask? I was thinking about our first meeting, he said with a smile. How random chance, or perhaps something more, brought us together at exactly the right moment. He paused. You know, I've had many students and residents under my guidance over the years. Some were technically brilliant but lacked heart. Others had compassion but struggled with the science. Rarely have I encountered someone with such a perfect balance of both. Tanya felt her cheeks warm at the praise. I'm just trying my best. Your best is quite remarkable, Dr. Caldwell said, and it's changing this hospital in ways you may not even realize. That evening, as promised, Dr. Caldwell's contractor friend showed up at Tanya's grandmother's apartment. He fixed not only the roof leak, but also a persistent plumbing problem they'd been living with for months. When Tanya tried to offer payment, he shook his head. Already taken care of, he said. Dr. Caldwell saved my daughter's life 15 years ago. Removed a brain tumor when 3 other surgeons said it couldn't be done. I owe him a lot more than a few home repairs. Later that night, as Tanya sat at her small desk working on her program ideas, her grandmother brought her a cup of tea. This doctor of yours, her grandmother said, settling into the chair beside Tanya's desk. He seems like a good man. He is, Tanya nodded. He's teaching me so much, and not just about medicine. Her grandmother studied her face. You know, when you first told me about meeting a blind man at the subway station, I was proud you stopped to help. That's how I raised you. But I never imagined it would lead to all this. Tanya looked down at her sketches for the children's program. Me neither. Life has a funny way of rewarding kindness, her grandmother said, patting Tanya's hand. Not always right away and not always in ways you expect, but good things come back around. The next morning, Tanya met with Dr. Wong, the head of pediatrics, a cheerful woman with bright eyes and an enthusiastic manner. She loved Tanya's ideas for the program and immediately offered additional resources to expand it. We've needed something like this for years, Dr. Wong exclaimed. I've seen children traumatized by routine procedures simply because no one took the time to explain things properly. This could make such a difference. By the end of the meeting, what had started as a small pilot project had grown significantly in scope. Dr. Wong wanted to implement the program throughout pediatrics and eventually hospital-wide. She also suggested that Tanya consider publishing her methods in a medical education journal. As Tanya walked through the pediatric ward afterward, she passed Miguel's old room. He had long since recovered and gone home, but she still remembered his frightened face when he first saw his IV. How many children felt that same fear every day? And how many could be helped if medical staff had better tools to communicate with them? She paused by the nurse's station where Nurse Chen was updating charts. Dr. Wong seems excited about the new program, Nurse Chen commented, looking up from her computer. You heard already? Tanya asked, surprised. Nurse Chen smiled. News travels fast around here, especially good news. She glanced around the ward. You know, Wilson, when you first started your rotation, I thought you were just another student passing through, but you're actually changing things for the better. Tanya felt a warmth spread through her chest at the veteran nurse's words. That's the thing about compassion, Nurse Chen continued. It's contagious, in the best possible way. As Tanya continued her rounds that day, she felt a new sense of purpose. The simple act of stopping to help a stranger had created ripples that were still expanding outward, touching more lives than she could have imagined. And somehow she knew this was just the beginning. 1 year later, Tanya stood at the podium looking out at the packed auditorium. The annual Mercy Hospital Benefit Gala was the biggest event of the year, bringing together doctors, administrators, donors, and community members. Never in her wildest dreams had she imagined she would be the keynote speaker. She spotted her grandmother in the front row, wearing her Sunday best dress and beaming with pride. Next to her sat Dr. Caldwell, distinguished in his tuxedo, white cane resting against his chair. He gave her an encouraging nod, somehow sensing her gaze upon him despite his blindness. Taking a deep breath, Tanya began her speech. A little over a year ago, I was running late for my clinical rotation. I was a nursing student with too many responsibilities, not enough time, and the constant worry that one mistake would derail everything I'd worked for. She paused, letting her words sink in. That morning in Grand Central Station, I saw an elderly blind man who needed help. Stopping to assist him meant risking my clinical evaluation. Walking past meant abandoning someone in need. The room was silent, everyone focused on her words. I made a choice that day, a simple human choice. What I didn't know was that the man I helped was Dr. Robert Caldwell. And that choice would change not just my life, but the lives of countless patients at Mercy Hospital. She gestured toward the display behind her, which showed colorful images from the Medical Mysteries, explained program that had been fully implemented throughout the hospital's pediatric ward. The program we're celebrating tonight began with one observation. Children are often terrified of medical procedures they don't understand. Their fear makes treatment harder, recovery longer, and the hospital experience traumatic. She clicked to the next slide, showing a young patient smiling as a nurse used one of the program's illustrated guides. But when we take the time to explain things in ways children can understand, something magical happens. Fear turns to curiosity, resistance becomes cooperation, and healing happens more quickly. Dr. Wong, seated at a table near the stage, gave Tanya a thumbs up. Under her leadership, the pediatric department had embraced Tanya's program wholeheartedly, and the results had exceeded everyone's expectations. Patient satisfaction scores had improved dramatically. Children reported less pain and anxiety. Parents praised the hospital's approach. What started as a simple idea has grown beyond anything I could have imagined, Tanya continued. Last month, 5 other hospitals in the state adopted our program. Next month, we'll be publishing our methods and materials in the Journal of Pediatric Nursing. And tonight, I'm thrilled to announce that thanks to the incredible generosity of our donors, the Compassionate Care Initiative will be expanding to include a dedicated child life specialist position focused entirely on helping children understand and cope with their medical experiences. Applause filled the room. In the years since its inception, the Compassionate Care Initiative had grown from a scholarship program to a hospital-wide commitment to more empathetic, patient-centered care. Tanya's program was just one part of a larger transformation taking place at Mercy. None of this would have been possible without the guidance and support of Dr. Robert Caldwell, Tanya said, turning toward her mentor. His belief in the importance of compassion alongside clinical excellence has shaped not just my career, but the culture of this hospital. Dr. Caldwell, would you join me on stage? Dr. Caldwell rose from his seat and made his way to the stage, navigating with his cane. A year of weekly mentoring sessions had created a deep bond between them. He had become not just a teacher but a friend, someone who pushed Tanya to develop her ideas and supported her when she doubted herself. As he reached the stage, Tanya guided him to the podium. When I lost my sight 5 years ago, Dr. Caldwell began, I thought my ability to contribute to medicine was over. I had defined myself by what I could do in the operating room, by the lives I could save with my hands. He smiled ruefully. It took a young nursing student helping me at a subway station to remind me that the most important quality in healthcare isn't technical skill, it's humanity. He turned in Tanya's direction. What Tanya has accomplished this year goes beyond a successful program. She has reminded all of us why we entered healthcare in the first place, to help people at their most vulnerable moments, to make a difference not just in physical outcomes but in the human experience of illness and healing. Dr. Caldwell stepped back from the podium, and Tanya continued her speech, detailing the next phase of the program's expansion. As she spoke, she caught the eye of Dr. Henderson sitting near the back of the room. The stern instructor who had once nearly failed her for tardiness now served on the Compassionate Care Initiative's advisory board. Their relationship had evolved from adversarial to collaborative, as Dr. Henderson recognized Tanya's genuine talent and dedication. After the formal presentation, the evening shifted to a reception where donors and hospital staff mingled. Tanya found herself surrounded by people congratulating her and asking questions about the program. It was overwhelming, but in the best possible way. Eventually, she managed to slip away for a moment of quiet. She found a small balcony overlooking the city lights and stepped out for a breath of fresh air. There you are, came a familiar voice. Her grandmother joined her on the balcony, carrying 2 glasses of sparkling cider. She handed one to Tanya. I thought you might need this. Thanks, Grandma. Tanya took a sip, grateful for the moment of calm. Can you believe all this? Sometimes I feel like I'm going to wake up and find out it was all a dream. Her grandmother chuckled. No dream, just the result of hard work and a good heart. She looked at her granddaughter with pride. Your parents would have been so proud of you. Tanya felt the familiar ache that came with thoughts of her parents, who had died in a car accident when she was just 7 years old. I hope so. I know so, her grandmother said firmly. You've always been special, Tanya. Even as a little girl, you noticed when people were hurting and tried to help. That morning at the subway station, that wasn't a fluke. That was you being exactly who you've always been. The balcony door opened again and Dr. Caldwell stepped out, guided by Dr. Wong. I thought I might find you getting some air, Dr. Caldwell said. Mind if we join you? Not at all, Tanya replied. Dr. Wong handed Dr. Caldwell a glass before excusing herself to return to the party. The 3 of them stood in comfortable silence for a moment, looking out at the city skyline, or in Dr. Caldwell's case, feeling the cool evening breeze. I received some news today that I wanted to share with you, Tanya, Dr. Caldwell said finally. The American Nursing Association has selected you as this year's recipient of the Compassionate Care Award. It's given to individuals who demonstrate exceptional empathy in healthcare settings and implement programs that improve patient experience. Tanya nearly choked on her cider. Are you serious? But that's a national award. And I'm still just a student. I haven't even graduated yet. You'll have graduated by the time of the ceremony in June, Dr. Caldwell pointed out. And while it's unusual for someone so early in their career to receive this recognition, Your work has already had a measurable impact on hundreds of patients. The selection committee was quite impressed. Her grandmother squeezed her hand. Like I said, special. Tanya felt tears welling in her eyes. From struggling nursing student to award recipient in just over a year, it seemed impossible. There's more, Dr. Caldwell continued. The award comes with a grant to further develop your program, and several hospitals across the country have expressed interest in implementing it. So it's going national? Tanya asked, astonished. It appears so, Dr. Caldwell nodded. Your simple idea of helping children understand their medical care could eventually impact thousands of young patients. Tanya leaned against the balcony railing, trying to process the magnitude of what he was saying. All because I stopped to help someone at a subway station? No, Dr. Caldwell corrected gently. All because you are who you are, Tanya. I was just lucky enough to be the one you helped that day. Your compassion was always going to find its way into the world. The three fell silent again, each lost in their own thoughts. Below them the city pulsed with energy, millions of lives intersecting in countless ways. How many of those intersections, Tanya wondered, had the potential to change lives the way her meeting with Dr. Caldwell had changed hers? The balcony door opened again and Dr. Henderson appeared. There you all are. Tanya, the hospital director wants to introduce you to some people from Children's Hospital Philadelphia. They're very interested in your program. Tanya nodded. I'll be right there. As Dr. Henderson returned inside, Tanya turned to her grandmother and Dr. Caldwell. Duty calls. Go shine, her grandmother said, giving her a quick hug. As Tanya headed back to the reception, Dr. Caldwell called after her. Tanya, remember what I told you that first day at the subway station? She paused, thinking back. You said that character is revealed in the choices we make when we think no one is watching. Yes, he nodded. But I was wrong about one thing. Someone is always watching, not to judge, but to be inspired. Your choice that morning has inspired an entire hospital to re-examine how we care for our most vulnerable patients. Never underestimate the power of one act of kindness. Tanya carried those words with her as she rejoined the party, moving through the crowd with a new sense of purpose. Her journey had begun with a simple choice to help a stranger. Where it would lead next, she couldn't say for certain, but she knew that whatever challenges came her way, she would face them with the same compassion that had guided her that morning at Grand Central Station. And somewhere in the city, perhaps at that very moment, another person was making a similar choice, a small act of kindness that might, in ways they could never predict, change the world for the better.